really planning for a child at that stage. We were
Yeah.
still, establishing our life. We were probably together for about 3 years.
But that's part of the purpose of this podcast to let other people know that if they do watch, you're not alone. This happens more than not, and you get through it. Hello, everyone. You're listening to Baby Steps, sponsored by Soho and Oxford Baby, a podcast dedicated to exploring the personal and emotional journeys of parenting. Today, I have Elle. Elle is the mother of one 10-year-old daughter. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So let's start off with just your journey to motherhood, like from the initial of deciding, okay, hey, I want to have children, to where you are here 10 years later with your daughter. So I know for some it is uh difficult, like, to get pregnant is difficult. I know for us, it took us, my husband and I, it took us 6 years. So that struggle was there. And I was reaching advanced maternal age. So it gets, as you get older, it gets a little harder. But everyone's journey is different. So if you would like to start off by telling us how your whole journey began.
Sure, sure, of course. And look, yeah, it wasn't an easy one. I was 38 by the time I got pregnant, and to be honest, I had pretty much given up on having children. I struggled to find a companion or a partner that I thought I would be compatible and could spend the rest of my life with.
Mhm.
And so when that happened, again, as I said, I was 38. We weren't really planning for a child at that stage. We were
Yeah.
still, establishing our life. We were probably together for about 3 years, when it just happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
As these things often do, they creep up on you when you're trying, when you're planning, they don't. But then when you just go, oh, whatever, we'll see what happens, they do. Um, and it was really funny because I became pregnant, and initially, at 38, everyone's saying everything's gone on, you've got to be careful, don't tell anyone just anything just yet. You've
Yeah.
still got to wait for the 12 months, 12 weeks, my apologies. And so we didn't, we kept it under wraps. And I was about to go visit my mum and my dad. They lived in a different state. And I kind of felt a bit funny. Anyway, so I went for a checkup, and it turned out that unfortunately I had miscarried. There was no heart rate. And in that same weekend, my mum rang and said that my dad passed
Oh
away.
my goodness.
So it was like a massive hit at the same time. And I just thought, well, in my mind, I'm not a very big religious
Yeah.
person, but I rationalized it that, well, obviously my bub stayed behind to ensure that my dad got settled in.
Hmm.
Um, it this
It
new
was
soul.
kind of comforting. I would assume that as sad as you were, it was comforting to know, right? Like that maybe spiritually they were together, right? Like they were
Absolutely.
together. Yeah. Hmm.
I'm one of those people that always tries to look for the good in the bad, and
Yeah.
that was my way of coping with it, and
Yeah.
just thinking, how could this have happened? Well, potentially because it was meant to, because I knew it was going to be a girl.
Yeah.
Just deep down, she stayed behind to make sure that my dad knew who to talk to, knew the ins and outs, show him the
Yeah.
new neighborhood, settling him in, and that was sort of compounded when. Probably after 3 weeks after we had the funeral, I got pregnant again.
Oh
You
my
know,
goodness.
in an aspect, in that time where I was told you're not going to, you're not supposed to, and your body's not quite right for it yet. It's not going to happen. Don't even try.
Yeah.
Uh, it did.
Yeah.
So it was as if, like I said, she made him feel at home, and then she came back to me. But so that was the crazy beginning of it. And then, of course, being 38, body not quite as resilient and flexible and all the rest as you are when you're
Yeah.
in your 20s. Things started to happen. So initially, I had issues with my sugars. Then I had, eventually preeclampsia. Then, well, at first they were saying she wasn't attached properly. Then she finally got attached properly. Then, it was all these little things to try me along the way. And it was something that, again, being the person that I am, I kept looking for the silver lining in the whole
Hmm.
hiccupy journey. And the crappier I felt, I was quite blessed because I had a doctor turn around and say, look, if you're feeling really bad, if you're feeling really yeah, so when you're feeling really unwell, when your body is really struggling,
Yeah.
that's when you know that your baby's thriving.
Yeah.
And for me, that was a little hope to hang on to. So the worse
Right.
I felt, the best I thought she was doing.
And
So,
that's so funny because I was just the opposite. Not a day that I felt terrible. Not a
oh,
day.
wow.
Not a day. Like, so it's so funny, like how each person, what their doctor tells them, right? So there's a coworker here that she's expecting as well, and she didn't feel, and she kept saying, something's wrong. I just feel fine. Like I said, so it's everyone's journey is different, and even each pregnancy is so different. With each
Absolutely.
child that you have, right? Like I only have the one, but it's just crazy how doctors say, but that's a good thing. That's something to hold on to. I felt as long as I didn't feel the aches and pains and I could feel her move, I was like, okay, I was okay.
It's amazing. Society really romanticizes the whole concept of being pregnant and having a baby, and it's this wonderful thing. And yes, 100% it is. But it's a very scary journey.
Yes.
And being so different, each woman experiencing it so differently, it puts you in that spot where you can't 100% rely on the stories of your friends, of your sisters, of your girlfriends, and it becomes quite, you really have to let go and trust the process.
Yeah.
Um, and that for a lot of people is even scarier.
Right. Yeah,
uh,
no. And yeah, so I just want to take a few steps back a little bit. So let's talk about like, okay, so you find out you're pregnant, right? Like the second time. Did you
mhm.
have any idea, or did you just know, like what were the signs to first suspect that, okay, I think I'm pregnant? Was it just the missed cycle, or did you have a gut before you even
No, well, they said that I can't. In that period of time, I cannot get pregnant because my lining wasn't correct, etc., etc. So it's
Yeah.
not possible. So then when my partner, my husband, went away to work because he used to go away to work for weeks on end,
Mm-hmm.
and I literally felt like a bus hit me, and I couldn't get out of bed. And I was like, oh my God, I must be coming down with a really bad flu. But then I didn't have a temperature. I didn't feel, whatever. And then I would have little hemorrhaging events in the shower, etc. So it was pretty traumatic. And finally at work, I was feeling so, because I kept going to work. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
nurse, in intensive care at that point in time. And, I ended up hemorrhaging in at work. And my boss just went, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Why aren't you home resting? And I said, I don't know what's going on with me. It's just my body behaving silly. I don't even know what's going on, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So she goes down to emergency. You go like the E&E, and you do not come up till they've sorted you out. And the guy did the bloods, the doctor did the bloods downstairs, and he's like, I know why you're so tired. I said, yeah, I know too. I've been hemorrhaging. That's why I'm tired because I'm losing all this blood. And he's like, no, you're pregnant. I'm like, no, don't be stupid. I can't be pregnant.
Oh my
I
goodness.
was, yes, you're right. I was, but I'm not anymore. My body's just trying to catch up.
Yeah. Oh my
He's like,
goodness.
no, dear, you're actually pregnant. And it just hit me like a ton of brick. And at that point in time, it was almost like, oh my God, yes, and it was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like I literally spoke to my belly.
Yeah.
Going, I'm so sorry. I ignored you and I this qualified all these signs and I didn't look after you. Mummy will look better after you now.
Yeah, I mean, who would think though? Like that was the last, and sometimes they say you put it out of your mind, right? Like, who would even think
Well,
that it
everyone
would
said it couldn't
happen?
happen.
Yeah,
Everyone said it
that
couldn't happen,
soon,
just
that
miscarriage.
quickly.
So it was
Yeah,
not
that's
possible.
amazing. So your husband, he's away when you find this out, correct? So
Yes.
did you tell him right away? Did you wait till he came home? Did you surprise him?
Oh, I waited till he got home because, yeah, I
Was it
wanted to
tough to
see.
hold on to?
It was very tough to hold on to, and yeah, his response was just because I suppose because we've just lost one. He was quite like dumbfounded as well, and he didn't need to sit down for a little while and
Yeah.
process the information.
That's so amazing. So you're going through, so how do you feel your first trimester? Like you're going through the pregnancy. Are you still very nervous now? Because I mean, for myself, I had the same experience as you. It didn't happen. It took me 6 years and then I miscarried and then, um, it took me 6 years to get pregnant. Then I was the first trimester, same thing. I miscarried, and I was like, you know what? It's never gonna happen. It took 6 years for me to even get here. I mean, it's never gonna happen. I'll be like almost 40 years old by the time this happens, you know? And my husband's 8 years older than me, so they'll be thinking that he's like the grandpa, you know? So but 3 months later, it happened, and it never happened again after that. That was it. I never got pregnant again. Just that one time, you know, that was it from it, but it was exciting, but I like I said, I felt great, you know. I didn't have any. I was nervous though. I didn't tell anybody until after the first trimester, like because I was so excited the first time. I jumped the gun. I told people, and then that's the most hardest thing I think you have to do
Mm,
is to tell people that it's not going to
never gonna
happen, right?
happen. Yeah.
And then it is a lonely feeling, although you have your partner and your husband or your significant other. It's still a lonely journey when you have that loss. It's different for you than it is for them. You know what I mean? Because
Absolutely.
and
I don't
I
think they
remember
can
going to the
fully.
doctor and them checking me, I have to afterwards, just to make sure that everything was, I was good to go, and just crying. And she, like, just because it's so devastating and people don't realize how common it
Mm.
really is. It happens to more women than not. And some people don't even know, you know what I mean? But it's very common, and I think some more people are. I feel that more and more podcasts that I actually do, the more people admit to having this happen to them. Right? It's just amazing.
When it happened to me, I was told that 1 in 3 women in Australia miscarries,
Mhm.
at least one or two of their pregnancies.
Yeah,
That's tremendously astounding numbers,
yeah,
and I think that needs to be talked about a lot more,
yeah,
especially for women, for first-time mothers,
yeah.
to lay that
Absolutely.
expectation. I'm not saying to bring those self-prophesizing, thoughts forward or anything like that, but to prepare. A little bit of preparedness helps with that feeling of, because I can guarantee you 80 most of these women, when they lose a child, they go, it's somehow my fault.
Exactly.
This is what we do. We for some reason, the way we are structured emotionally and mentally, we always tend to blame it on ourselves. And
Right.
that, having, like you mentioned, having to tell somebody, it's almost shameful because you have to admit it that you've done something wrong.
Right.
When in fact, it's nothing that you've done wrong.
And
It's
that's the
just,
part of the purpose of this podcast, to let other moms and even dads know,
mm,
that they're not alone. This
yeah.
happens. Sometimes you know, a spouse doesn't know how to support like, what can you say? There's nothing you can really just say just to be there, right? There's nothing you can say that's going to make me feel better. It's just I have to process that on my own, right? So you do get over it. Everyone has their, you know, it takes some longer than others, but life goes on. Eventually, it's devastating, but life goes on. You eventually work day after day gets a little easier, but you always remember, right? You always remember that event, like it was
Hmm.
yesterday, right? I can recall everything that day. I could, it's just like a permanent picture in my mind. So, but that's part of the purpose of this podcast to let other people know that if they do watch, you're not alone. This happens more than not, and you get through it. I mean, I've heard some pretty devastating stories in the short time that I've been doing this, but we're resilient,
That
That's why
we
we're the
are.
moms, you know? Yeah.
That
So going to your second trimester, when did you start to tell people when did you feel comfortable? Okay, like we've made it past this, 12 weeks. Did you start to tell people? Who was the first people you told?
So, the first 12 weeks, as I mentioned before, were absolutely atrocious. I was sick as a dog, and I just put it down to everyone that I spoke to as having the cold or a flu or what have you, just so that I wouldn't have to. And again, feeling nervous about retaining. And
Right.
then I think it was after my second ultrasound where I could actually see her doing backflips, and
Yes.
then you could see that there were limbs and there was everything. And it was, yeah, probably about 13 or 14 weeks that
Hmm.
I contacted my mum and told my mum first, and then from mum, it just kind of went on. And it was amazing because around that, the second trimester, I still didn't feel 100%.
Yeah.
The vomiting and whatever else stopped, but I still felt quite tired.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I'm old. I'm hardly old at 38, but
Yeah.
yeah, I just very tired. Like someone just bashed me up and bruised and sore.
Yeah.
Someone took a baseball bat to me. Um, but at least there was that joy of the heartbeat being there, the movement being there, and then she was there, and
Yeah.
and so we started telling people and started to, and I reckon it was around that time where I was saying like, but I'm still experiencing all these aches and pains, and I said to Dad, like, are you sure everything's gonna be okay? Because you carry that trepidation with you, and he's like, yeah, 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 you're absolutely fine. You just, the crappier you feel, the better she feels.
Hmm.
So just, take it on the chin. I'm like, yep, okay, and that's what I did for the rest of the pregnancy, no matter how even once I got to the point, towards the end of the second trimester and beginning of the oh, you froze
You're
there for
there.
me.
Yeah. You're there now.
Yeah. Yeah. So even, towards the end of the second trimester, when you start to get big and things get really uncomfortable and you get the swelling and whatever else, and you can't sleep and all that, I'd be just like, no, that's okay. She's thriving. She's thriving. So it's okay.
Yeah.
Just learn to love this. This is so nice. I
Yeah.
can't sleep third night in a row, but she's okay. And that was
Yeah, it's crazy. So preparing for like her arrival, did you have, a birth plan? Did you go in knowing what, was it
so
a
because I was like older,
yeah,
I ended up having a midwife, and
okay.
so she helped me through. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, I had fluctuations in my sugar level, and initially the embryo wouldn't attach, so they were monitoring very closely, and they were saying, don't do too much, be as calm and as rest as much rest as possible.
Did you still
Um,
work through the pregnancy, the whole?
Yes, I did.
Mhm.
Obviously, initially I took it a little bit more easier, but then
Yeah.
once she was attached, I was better. Then there was issues with her positioning, that she wasn't in the right spot. There, because I was 38, they ended up doing like the deep needle aspiration to check for any abnormalities or anything like that. So there was all these little hiccups, little things little scares that kept
Hmm.
coming up throughout the pregnancy, which kept me on my toes mentally and emotionally. So I never felt like I really let go and allowed myself to enjoy the
Hmm.
process. There was this, fear always at the back of my head
Yeah.
that
No,
something.
I know that fear. I know. I mean, now that I've experienced it and she was healthy and, you know, and I tell anyone now, like, try to enjoy it. You're always going to have that. I try not to give too much advice, right? But the one thing that that's the one thing that I try to tell people is enjoy it. You're going to be nervous, and nobody can tell you not to be because it is a nerve-wracking experience, although it's joyous as well. But you have to enjoy it as much as you can because each pregnancy is different, right? So you have to, like, embrace and be, and there's so many people that wish that that can't conceive or can't, they wish they were in your position, right? So just enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. I
It's
wish there was a way we could trial it, like have a trial run.
absolutely.
So then, because every mum I know says, "Oh, the second time it's going to be different," or "I've done, second pregnancy was different," and I kind of think, well, I think I would completely be a different person with that second pregnancy. I would
Right.
let go a lot more, and I would relax a lot more, and I wouldn't stress about things as much, and
See, it's funny because like everyone's story is different, as we keep saying. So, not myself, but my sister-in-law, she got pregnant like right away with my nephew, right? Like right away. They got married. I think by that they got married in October. By February, she was pregnant,
wow.
right? So, got pregnant right away. And then their plan after he was, I want to say year or two old, they were planning for another child, right? So she gets pregnant again. She gets to the second trimester. They know it's a girl. She gets COVID.
Oh dear.
She then has to now make the decision if the baby was healthy, but the environment was not within her, So then she has to make this decision on what to do, right? So unfortunately, it was not healthy for the baby, but the baby would not thrive and grow. At that moment, the baby was healthy. So she has to medically, because she is in the medical profession, had to make a decision on you know, what was going to be good for her and for the baby, right? So unfortunately, she miscarried. Um, and then while determining what to do with that decision. So, and then it took her a long time to get pregnant with the third one. And the third one, my other nephew gave her she did not feel well at all.
Yeah.
At all. So it's just amazing how each pregnancy, was very, very, very different. I think she said that the third one was the hardest pregnancy versus the first one, right? Second one is a different scenario, uh, a different scenario, but she felt good. You know what I mean? She felt good during that pregnancy. Unfortunately, until she got COVID, then things changed. But, the third one I think was the toughest I just remember her just feeling terrible the
Yeah.
whole time. Yeah.
Was it a boy?
A boy, yes.
Yeah.
I heard although my coworker's having a boy and she says she doesn't feel sick at all. I felt
Oh.
wonderful. I felt sick one time and I told this story a few times on the podcast. My husband, it was Thanksgiving, not Thanksgiving, St. Patrick's Day, and he was making corned beef and cabbage.
Hmm.
And the smell, I
Yeah,
said,
no.
you have to throw that away. The only time I didn't feel well, and was because of that.
Mhm.
But it was a journey. So now that we're in the third trimester, you're getting ready for baby. What is most important? Now, your husband, he's still working, traveling, correct? So
Yeah,
you're some of this time you're doing this on your own, right?
very much so.
So, um, what's most important? Is the nursery important? I mean, besides her getting here and being healthy, like what were some of the things that were important to you? Was it making sure you had the right name? Did you have a name picked out prior? Was it the nursery? Was it her clothes? Was it the stroller?
I have to think back. Do you know what? I think the name I think the name we had sorted out pretty earlier on in the piece. I had a couple of names that I really liked from my childhood, from fairy stories,
Mm-hmm.
fairy tale stories, and I was like, if I ever have a little girl, if I have a little boy, if it was going to be a boy, it was going to be named after my dad, obviously.
Yes.
And then, I had a fairy tale princess that I remembered from my childhood, and then there was this woman that I was really at that point in time in business. Her name was Poppy. She was when I was growing up. She was the first entrepreneur really
Mm-hmm.
that came onto my radar, and I just was so in awe of this strong and inspired to be this woman. So
Yeah.
she had the lipstick empire. I don't know if you remember, that was quite some time ago.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, yeah, so we had the names, and I remember knowing that my husband would want to have a say, but I
Mhm.
wanted those two names. So I presented them in such a way that he felt like he picked one of them. And then
What did you end up naming her?
Poppy Arabella.
Oh, that's so cute. Yes, very
Yes.
nice. Very
And
nice.
I kind of managed to get it in such a way that he felt responsible for half of that name. So he
Well,
was
that's
happy.
good. We have a way to do a little bit of manipulating too, which is nice, right?
It was just a little, it wasn't a nasty manipulation, but it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
just,
absolutely.
and he was happy. I mean, if he said that, no, definitely no, he
Yeah.
would have chosen something else, would have gone, explored that path too. But it just so happened that I was able to make it happen. Um, and then do you know what? Because he was in an away and stuff, I got busy. Well, besides working, I got busy with making the nursery. I like furniture restoration and so forth. So, and I tried not to be one of those mums, and I'm not saying it in a derogatory way. We all
Right.
do things differently. But I wanted to have some things that I created and put in there. I didn't want to go in
Hmm.
there and get everything brand new. And,
Right.
I didn't think that, the consumer world says you need this, that, and the other, and the warmer of the, you need, so many things that you don't actually need. And then you end up with this nursery full of crap that
Mhm.
you don't know, no room for the baby for all the
I mean,
stuff that you.
even now, like I look and I look because my nephews are of age of having their own children now, and I'm like, this stuff wasn't even here like 14 years ago. This is like
And
insane.
we made do, didn't we? And we managed. So
It's
that was the thing, like there was a lot of stuff that I got hand-me-downs and a lot of stuff I got like little, furniture. So I was out there in the front yard with the sander, mask on, obviously,
mm-hmm.
sanding down furniture and getting the chest of drawers ready and getting the crib ready and getting things like that. So that was my way of, easing the
Nesting.
stress
Yeah.
and nesting. That was me creating something for her. And it was funny because she ended up coming early, almost 6 weeks, almost
Okay.
6 weeks. And it was around tax time. And my husband was away. So I was at home doing my taxes. And my, my, what are they? Not a handmaiden. I don't know why I've got handmaiden in my hand. In my my midwife came up
Yes.
and she did my, my pulse and my blood pressure and all the rest of my checks. She's like, "Oh, your blood pressure is really high," because my blood pressure normally is really low. So it was sitting around 130 or something, which for
Yeah.
most people that's a normal level. But she goes, "No, that's starting to get a bit high. It's getting to 138, 140." She goes, "We better get you to hospital just to do some checks, just do some bloods." I normally set it at 100, so that she was seeing that as it being a little bit elevated. And I'm like, "No, don't be silly. I'm absolutely fine. I feel fine." And she goes, "But I would feel better if you went with me." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Fine, I have to, I have to." So I packed up my tax documents and I literally
Okay.
took them with me to hospital. Going, if I'm going to be wasting time sitting around here, I might as well be doing this.
Hmm. Not that you're gonna have a
um,
baby or anything, you'll be
no,
busy. Yeah.
you know, I thought it was a whole
Yeah.
much to do about nothing really.
Right.
And they got me in there and I did bloods and I rang him and I said, "Look, don't worry about coming back early. Like this is just silly. And he's like, no, no, I will. I'm like, no, don't worry about it. Anyway, just as well that he did, because yeah, it turned out I was my all my proteins and whatever else was elevated, and I was preeclamptic. And they're like, well, this was on a Friday. She goes, we're going to have to induce you. And long story short, she was basically in my arms by Saturday night,
Wow.
and my tax went out the window.
Yeah.
And just as well that he did, because I had
Oh,
this
that's so
beautiful baby
awesome.
girl.
I'm glad he got there I'm glad he made the decision to come back and you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So did you read any books or did you listen to any podcasts or anything that would or advice from people like that or you could recommend to anyone that might be listening, was there anything
You
that
know
you
what?
read?
I did. I read the standard book, the what to expect when you're expecting.
Hmm.
But the thing I thought was that realistically, that book should be read when you're trying to conceive. When you're actually expecting, you should be reading about the first year. Like the what to expect when you're expecting is yeah, you should that the information in there you should already know when you're in
Right.
that state. So I think it would make that journey so much easier. It's
Right.
almost like yeah, having it's too late having that information. So
Yeah.
yes, definitely read stuff, definitely get to know. And now too, I mean, she's 10 and I'm already reading stuff about the teens. I'm trying to stay abreast because things change so fast. And like I said I was expecting her not for another 6 weeks. I thought I had plenty of time, so same and same thing as once she's been out in this world, I think I have plenty of time before she starts doing this. I'll
Mm.
have plenty of time before she starts talking back. I'll have plenty of
Oh
time
no.
she starts doing this.
Mm-mm. I'm here to let you know. I try to I mean, I haven't been in it that long to be. I mean, she just so I personally feel there's a big difference. Once you get to age 12 is where I felt that it starts, right? Like where they know everything, right? They're trying to find their independence. They still, the 10-year and 11, they're still like with their friends, with their parents, kind of, and you don't really let them, you allow them and give them a little leadway, but they're still too young to kind of navigate through certain things on their own, right? So but like 12, I feel you give them a little bit more independence. And then they start, once that little bit of independence gives them a little bit of an attitude, right? So I think girls, I mean, are much harder than boys.
Mm.
I just think because, I mean, not the boys don't go through it. I just think that between them getting their menstrual cycle and just trying to figure out, girls could be so mean to each other. It's difficult. I feel like the navigation between my sister had my older sister had boys, right? So she was like, it's very different. She's like, it's very different having a teenage girl than having a
Mm.
teenage boy. I'm still learning. I'm still
I tell
learning.
you, I think mine's been training me since she was 8. She's very opinionated.
Is
She
she?
thinks she was a 12-year-old in an 8-year-old's body. And I love it. You don't want to stifle that. You
Yeah.
want her, I want her to be strong and powerful within herself. But damn, does she give me a run for my money?
Me too. I know. Yeah. And one thing I'm trying to teach my daughter now, I feel like at this age, she's at the age now where she cares what her peers think, right? And I understand that. We've all been 12, we've all been that age before.
Hmm.
But like even last night, I picked her up. I got home from work, and before I even got out of the car, I told her come outside because she wanted to go to the store for something. So she gets in the car and she's crying. And I said,
Mm.
"What's wrong?" I don't know if it's a friend. I don't know, like, and we're pretty open. I mean, she just tells me now, she'll like, oh, I think so and so is cute. So I didn't know if it was somebody, a boy hurt her feelings because she's 14 now. Like, are you she's starting to get to that age, still too young, but, I
Hmm.
try to be open minded about things, so
Absolutely.
she
Yeah.
communicates with me. So it was all over. She didn't do well on her science paper.
Oh,
And the tears, you would have thought she lost her best friend.
oh bless.
I said, and her name is Layla. And I said, Layla, it's okay. The semester just started.
Yeah.
I'm okay if you don't do well, as long as I know that you tried and gave 100%. There's nothing you can do if you study. She's a very good student. So and she plays sports. So this is her grades are also very important to her because she knows no not having good grades, you won't be allowed to play sports, right? But it's just, I mean, the tears, you would have thought that she lost her best friend.
Mm,
So it's and then you just talk to her and she understood. I said, look, you have plenty of time, right? I said, go to the teacher. I'm trying to make a respond. I can email the teacher, but she's not my teacher. You
mm,
email the teacher and you tell her, ask her if you can redo the paper. If she says no, then accept that you can't redo it and you'll just work harder on the next thing. So she emailed her and everything, and she just called me a while ago and she said, the teacher let me redo the paper and she's going to find out the average between the two. So like
oh.
it all works. I try to give her advice and, not so much tell her what to do, but give her advice. Look, you can do this if you don't do this. So I try to encourage her, nicely manipulate her to understand, like, I want you to do this, encourage her to do this, but allow her to make the choice because I feel like that's, we have to allow them to fail too, because if we do everything for them, then they'll never won't be able to accept failure, right? So,
Mm, mm,
um, but I'm glad she resolved the issue, and I have that relationship with her where she feels comfortable enough to cry. And 'cause I was very different, right? So I would hold it in, not tell anybody, and then it would become a big problem, right? So
mm,
I'm trying to tell her, don't follow everyone else. If you have a problem, I don't care if you go to the teacher 10 times in a class
mm,
period, you're worried about what everyone else is saying, but I can promise you that they are wanting to do what you're doing, but they don't have the courage. So be that person, be that leader, don't be a follower. In the end, it's your grade, right? So stop worrying about what other people are thinking and, advocate for yourself. Go up there and, but it's difficult. I'm glad she listens, but I'm trying to teach her be a leader, not a follower, but it's tough.
it is. So, the whole pregnancy, the whole journey there is, it's only just the beginning. It's a taster of the rest of the journey that's still ahead.
Yeah, I
And
mean, yeah, I
I don't
still
think
get
you can
advice from my
ever.
mom. I mean,
Yes.
I'm 49 years old and I still get advice from my mother. I still look to my mother when I have a problem. I still, so we'll always be needed. That's for sure.
Did you find that like I was so independent, and like you're saying, if I did something, I would sort of keep it to myself. And I found I've actually turned to my mum after the pregnancy. Once I became a mum,
Yes.
I kind of went, oh my God, it kind of just made sense, the whole thing that she's been through.
Because I think, and it was the
Much
same thing for
closer.
me. I was much closer to my mother after I had my daughter. And I feel because now you have something more in common, right? Like not that you're still be always be your mother's child, but I think it also makes your relationship different. Your mother, she becomes your quote unquote lack of a better your friend, right? Because so she's happy to guide you. She's happy and she's on that journey with you, right? So she's here to you guys have more in common. Before she was your mom. There's nothing really in common. You don't have the friends. You
Yeah,
can't talk about going out to a restaurant. Hey, mom, I went to this great restaurant. Even if it's a silly thing now, you could talk about things you like, things you don't like, and you're old enough to
you're in the
hear those
same club.
stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hear those stories. It's funny to hear stories now as an adult of things that happened when we were kids that I had like no clue or I just didn't understand or her just you were too young to even it wasn't any of your business. But now that I'm older and she shares those stories and she'll say, remember when? And I was like, oh, like I had no idea, so it's a wild ride. It's a lot of fun. And what
It
grade is
certainly
she
is.
in now?
She here in Australia in grade 4.
Oh, grade 4.
So
Okay. Yeah.
I think we have years are slightly different
Mm-hmm.
the way it's set up because we do till grades, or she'll do to grade six, and
Mm-hmm.
then she'll go to high school.
Okay.
So grade eight, she'll have to make up 2 years and then go to high school after that, which I think you guys go to college. So it's
Yeah, so
slightly
we go. So for us, like my daughter is in eighth grade now. So next year she'll go to high school and do 4 years, the 4 years there, and then go to
okay.
college. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So
So
similar.
yeah. So she's ready. She's already looking at what colleges, what university she wants to go to. I said, you still have 4 years to go.
4 years goes like that
I
though,
know.
doesn't it?
I know. She's a big softball player, so she is, looking at school so she could potentially. She said she'll go where the money is. It's a smart girl.
Fair enough.
But
Yeah, that makes sense.
yes. So is there any last piece of advice that you would give to anyone listening, no matter how small or how big, from your journey to, you know,
I suppose just that each journey is different, and just try, like you said, try to relax through it.
hmm
Um, Hang on, I just thought I lost you here. Try to relax through it.
yeah.
Try to enjoy the ups and the downs. Embrace every opportunity. You don't know if you're going to have another opportunity. Like I can't have any more kids, so that was
hmm
my one and only chance. And I'm really glad of those words that the doctor said to me because I think I would have gone through the pregnancy grumbling, oh, this is sore, that is sore, and the experience would have been completely different,
Yes.
and I potentially would have regretted that down the track. So embrace the aches, embrace everything that's thrown at you, and if you can, try and relax and enjoy it all. It is you're now part of a club, a
Yep.
very elite club of women in the world, and your comprehension will just open up so much more. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, just enjoy
It's a
it.
great experience. Well, thank you so much for joining our podcast today and taking the time to tell us about your journey. It's been a wonderful story, and I'm so glad that your husband was there to make the birth of your daughter. That's so great. But thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you.